Alrighty, good morning. My name is Kyle Houchins. I'm a tech and a trainer for McNeil, and this is Getting Started Rhino 6 for Windows. Um, we do these about once a month or so, and if you've been to one of these before, you kind of know the drill. If you haven't been to one of these before, the goal of this is to be more of a demo, um, talk session, hangout session, jam session if you're a musician. We're kind of uh, what I try to do is sketch something up either the night before or the morning of, usually the morning of, that I have not modeled before, and I don't practice it, and I don't give myself any chance to preview the material other than just the sketch and thinking about it. Because I want to simulate what happens when someone drops a sketch on your desk and says, build this, and you've never seen it before, and you've never built it before, and you don't know how to proceed, and you have to figure it out. What happens a lot is somebody will take a level one, a level two class, and they'll feel pretty good about themselves. They'll hit their desk and somebody will drop a sketch on their desk, or you'll sketch something and try to build it. And then you're just staring at what I refer to as the clean sheet. And a little bit of clean sheet syndrome tends to be daunting sometimes when you're trying to figure out how to go from tutorials to the real world. So the goal of these sessions is not necessarily a class. I don't expect you to kind of follow along because I'm going to move pretty quickly. But what I want you to do is to take notes, ask questions. That's the key thing. I want you to hit the chat, use the chat. If you see something that I've done that you're like, what in the world are you talking about? Hit the chat. I'll stop. I'll try to explain it a different way. This is kind of like you being able to open the top of my head and look at my thought process, and hopefully some of that is useful for you. If I get stuck or break something or get lost or something like that happens along the way, which it does frequently. Like I said, if you've seen these before, you've seen some of these go right off a cliff. We'll stop, talk about it, figure out how to recover from that, and then hopefully there's a little bit of learning that can be had within that unfortunate live event. So buckle your seatbelts, fill your coffee, heat your tea, whatever you're doing. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. We've got people from all over the place here today, which is awesome. So today, as always, I'm going to start with a sketch, and we're going to start by using the picture command. And I did this sketch the other day of this old radio. I saw something that I liked, and I took a little liberties and designed something that kind of went along the same thing. Simple product, but it's got some interesting little surfacing areas in it. And the one defining characteristic is this center slice right through the middle. There's a surface change. This surface peels under, this surface peels up. So there's a break here with a highlight line. And then we have kind of a fading corner crease thing kind of going on here that we'll dig into. And then the way that this upper section kind of starts in the front and then peels to the back, I thought was kind of interesting. And then we'll talk about maybe trying to do some textures and things like that as well. So I'm going to try and knock this out in about an hour, hour and a half, something like that. If you can't stay the whole time, that's fine. Don't sweat it. It is going to be posted on our YouTube page and on Vimeo, our Rhino Vimeo page. So you'll be able to take a look at the result later. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Any questions so far? Anybody just starting to use Rhino for the very first time, or how much experience does everybody have? Hit the chat and let me know. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to create a new layer here just for the image. I'm going to stick it here, and then I'm actually going to take this and slide it out of the modeling window. The reason I do that is because I can't stand modeling, especially in shaded view, where I have the model halfway through the sketch, right? That doesn't do me a whole lot of good. I can't really see anything there. So what I like to do is try and take this and stick it back here so I can see, I can still have the reference, but if I go to the front view, everything lines up as you would expect. So modeling over, one more thing I'm going to do is change the transparency on this image, because right now, if I were to model over this, you can see, especially if I go over an area that has high contrast, it's very difficult to see my line work. So I'm going to click on this, go to the Materials tab over here. If the Materials tab is not loaded, right-click on it, find it in your list, and make sure that the check is checked next to it. Once you have that done, we'll slide down here to the transparency slider, and I'm just going to raise this up a little bit, which lightens the image. All right, once we've got it set the way we like, I'm going to just go over here and go to the layer and lock it, and then that way it's not selectable anymore and it doesn't get in my way, but it's in the scene where I like. Actually, I'm going to move it just a little bit, so I'm going to put it right at the origin here. All right, so we can build from 0, makes it a little bit easier. The other thing I like about having images on a layer, if I had more than one image, I'd have a layer for each image, and I'd be able to turn those on or off in the layer stack as needed. So that way it's really nice to organize it that way and have a way to declutter your screen if you need to. So let's think about this thing a little bit and try and figure out what we want to do. And the very first thing I want to lay out is just this slash through the thing. It's just a straight line. So we're going to go ahead and just drop that in there. And then we've also got this defining line. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drop this right in there. So we've got our two basic kind of defining lines. And then we can break this model up into a couple pieces, right? We can do this lower section down here. We can do the upper section, and then we can do this sweeping form in the back here. And they all kind of relate, and they all have to kind of blend and work together. So we'll have to think a little bit about that, how we do it. But for now, as we're picking through this, I'm just going to go ahead and lay out the rest of this thing. And I'm going to use straight lines to start with. And that may seem a little counterintuitive for a model that has a lot of form, but there's a reason for that. And I'm going to overbuild here, assuming that corner. And I'm going to do another one here. I'm going to do one down to here. Now I have to decide, is this going to come down and touch here, and then this section is going to be built off of that, so that this surface and this surface are kind of in a line, and then it drops back from there. The sketch indicates there may be some kind of weird twisting thing going on there, but I think that may have to do with the fact that I was showing a little bit of perspective in that sketch. So I think for now I'm gonna assume that this and this are essentially coincident faces, and then this line back here is actually dropping back in space. And it also drops back in space, but it goes up at a bit of an angle. So I'm gonna kind of just place that, and it does have a little jauntiness to its rake here, so it's a little tighter down here than it is up here. And then let's start defining these forms a little bit, refining the forms a little bit. And because I used straight lines, if I turn on the control points for this, you'll notice I've only got one point at one end and one point at the other, right? And that doesn't give me any opportunity to be able to modify these things. So I'm going to take all of these curves, and I'm not going to rebuild them. I'm going to change their degree, if I spell it right. And I'm going to change the degree from 1 to 3. And when I do that, you'll see that it goes from having 2 points to having 4 perfectly spaced even points. Each section of the curve is evenly spaced, which gives us really nice high quality curves that we can then start editing by picking these points and moving them like this. And that is going to give us a really high quality curve with really nice point distribution and things like that. So this is going to set us up well to start building nice surfaces. Now, do you have to do it this way? No, you don't. But it's super easy. It's super convenient. You'll get nice curves and things like that. So definitely recommended. And if you needed higher order curves, like if you needed to start doing curvature, then you would simply change, you'd get the curve to this point here, and you'd change degree again. If you don't know what I'm talking about as far as high order curves, don't worry about it. But we would change this degree 5, which would then give us 6 evenly spaced points. But if you notice, the shape of that curve did not change. If I back up and go forward, you can see that the actual shape doesn't change. I just get more points. And so what that does is that gives you a way to lay out really, really high quality curves really quickly without having to actually go and place a bunch of points. And so you end up with really nice spacing for what you want to do. So let's go into perspective and take a look and see kind of where we want to go from here. Now, we know that this line is the farthest forward, right? So if we take this curve and we peel it back a little bit, if I pick these two control points and I peel it back a little bit, I'll know that I'm starting to get that shape, right? And I probably want to go one more point up on the tree here and pull that one back a little bit as well. And you can see that everything stays super organized and super clean, right? So we've got this nice kind of shape. Everything's clean. It's peeling back from there. And we need to do the same thing up here. So I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to grab the end points of that curve. I'm going to peel this whole thing back. Oop, got to get the whole thing. There we go. I'm going to peel this one back a little bit. I'm going to go back a little farther because I think this has a little bit more rake at the top. And then I'm going to grab the next 2 points down. I'm going to pull them just a little bit. And I may even, I don't want this line to be tangent. So what I don't want is for all of these points to line up. So I may actually break that by pulling this point a little bit farther. And you can play with it and see, you know, what feels right as far as this thing. And I may go back something like that. Now, another way to do this if I back up is I could just grab this thing, set the gumball down here and rotate it. That's one way of doing this. That actually might not be a terrible way of doing it because I can rotate this back like this, and then I can grab these 2 points and I can pull them forward. And that gives me a little bit more control on that, right? We want just a little peak on there. We don't want it to be, we don't want this to be dead tangent. So if I pick these 2 points, see how close that handle is? I may actually want to break that a little more so that it has a little bit more shape at that edge, right? So I definitely want that to be a defining thing. All right, so now I can take this and I can set my gumball here. I have a hotkey for moving my gumball, by the way, if you don't know how to do that. If we go to Tools, Options, Aliases here, the alias that I'm using is Gumball Relocate, and I have it set to the GR key. I relocate the gumball a lot because it's really, really helpful, and so that's actually a very helpful alias to have. So these are all my hotkeys in here if you want to take a second and screenshot that or whatever. There's the top of them, and then there's the bottom. That's all of it right there. All right. So let's take this and reassemble this. I'm going to just move it from here to there. And then I'm going to actually take this curve and I'm going to use the match command. I'm going to match this to here. I'm going to just do it position. And then I'm going to take a look at a few little points down here. And I'm going to peel this one back a little bit, kind of evaluating the shape. Same thing here. I'm going to pull this one back just a little bit. So that should give us a nice kind of continuity break at this center section, but it'll give us 2 easily definable surfaces that we can then use to work with. So we've got our shape in that direction, we've got our shape in this direction. And this one looks like, in relationship, if I kind of sight down this thing, see how this curve and this curve are kind of out of phase with each other? See how that's like too much curve? If I sight right down that thing, I may want to lighten that up a little bit just by grabbing the center points on this and straightening them out a little bit. We always want to kind of keep an eye on our family of shapes and make sure that our shapes relate to each other as we rotate around an object, because if you get to a point where you just see something that's really, really out of shape with something else, you know, you can kind of start predicting that it's gonna be a mess when you're done. All right, so let's go ahead and surface this and see what we've got. And I'm just going to use a 4-sided surface, and that lives up here, right here, surface from 2, 3, or 4 edge curves. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here. And this curve goes the full length of this surface. And so I'm actually going to copy this curve, and then I'm going to split it with a point right here so that I get 4 sides for this guy as well. So I can go take that curve, 2, 3, 4, and it gives me 2 really kind of nice high quality surfaces. And if I render this, I can see that light line is starting to show up. Let me put a material on here so it's a little bit easier to see. See that now? That's what we wanted. We wanted that nice kind of sharp definition right through that thing. All right. Any questions so far? Excellent. Okay. So we've got our basic shape laid out, and let's go ahead and just pull this into a form. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to take both of these, start dragging, tap Alt, and then I'm going to bring it back and make a copy of it. Now the back of this thing is flat, so I'm going to just simply click my gumball and type 0. And I'm going to flatten all those out. See that? You guys used that trick before? That's an awesome trick. And then I can simply start surfacing. I can just go here and here and here, just connecting the dots, right? Okay, now I picked the entire section right there, which is okay, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish going and doing these, and then I'm going to duplicate these 2 edges, and then I'm going to split them with a point so that I can build a little clean surface that doesn't go past. I'm not going to overbuild it. Now I've got 4 curves. I can use this edge, I can use this curve, that edge, and that curve. And we have laid out our basic object, right? But we're not done yet, because we don't really have any shape in these 2 surfaces. I don't like how flat this thing, see how it's just extruded? We don't really want that. I want this to actually have a little bit of form, and you can see that this surface, although it's degree 3 in this direction, it's only degree 1 in this direction because there's only 2 control points. So we'll simply just change degree. We're going to make it degree 3 in that direction, and it's already degree 3 in the other, so we're just going to leave that. And magically we get another set of control points right down the center. So if we go to the top view, go to wireframe, pick those, and then we can just pull them out and get a little bit of shape. Now, we could have laid curves out for that, that's fine, but I kind of like when we're kind of freestyling and designing, I kind of like being able to design this on the fly as opposed to having to lay out everything and then go back and stuff like that. It's one of the benefits of Rhino, and the fact that you can kind of design things instead of just being a modeler. You know, you're not just pecking at a keyboard and trying to copy a sketch. You're trying to actually design the thing in 3-dimensional space. And at some point the sketch is a reference, but at some point you throw that away because the sketch is not real, right? It's an image, but it doesn't really have any volume, and so it doesn't really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really count as a real object. And so I use the sketch to kind of get myself going. This is like a conversation I have with myself, and then at some point I kind of ignore the sketch and I start looking at the model and I say, okay, well, what is this design actually doing, and what does this thing actually look like? And that's where I start kind of making my determinations as far as what the shapes in these things look like. So this thing also is really flat across the top. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to change degree here. And I'm going to do this 3. That's already 3. Turn on the points. And the first thing you're going to say is, well, you got this big hole in the edge. And I'll say, yep, you're right. And that's fine. So, oops. Pick these 2 points, Cell V, I get all the points in that direction. I'm gonna pull it up, just kind of roughing things out here right now, right? Because I can always match surf, and I can do this position, and I can do this average, and it sticks the edges together really nicely. So I get that form translates over one to the other, which I find super useful. So let's do the same thing here. Change degree 3 to 3, turn the points on. I always do that the wrong way. Cell V. Cell U and cell V selects the points in either direction. So I'm going to pull this out like this, give this a little form like that. Match surf, average. We're doing great. This guy, I may let that be pretty flat. You know, I think maybe, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe we should add some shape. Let's add some shape to it. Let's not be quitters. So I'm going to change the degree on both of these. And let's go ahead and get both of these. Cell V there. I'm going to pull this up a little bit. Just give it not a lot. I just don't, you know, sometimes if you have a flat shape, it'll go concave on you, and we don't want it to look concave, so we give it a little bit of an arc. That's a, you know, I was trained as a car designer. I went to Center for Creative Studies in Detroit with a car design degree, and one of the things they always said is you never want your curves to be hollow on a car. So even a straight line has to have a tiny little bit of arc to it. And that's just kind of translated over into my product design stuff. So old habits die hard, I guess, huh? All right, so let's move these guys out. I'm gonna grab all of those and just pull them out like that. Give a little bit of shape there. All right, everybody still with me? Nothing hard here yet, right? Match surf. And that gives us a really good starting point for this thing. And at this point, we could even go ahead and grab everything and join it and turn this into a solid. And if we check for naked edges, the only naked edges we should have are the bottom, and we can fix that with cap. And if you want to know how I just pulled that out of there, Shift, this is a poly surface, right? Shift, Control, click allows you to sub-object select anything on a poly surface, and then just delete, and then I can just run the cap command and put a bottom back on it. So now we're back with our solid object. Now, before we start refining, before we start kind of jumping into making the blends and things that are going to kind of bring this thing to life, let's go ahead and finish this transition here. And the way that I'm reading this is that it actually starts coincident with this edge, right? This edge right here. And then it peels back and it lands somewhere kind of in the middle of this edge. So let's go ahead and just draw it that way. And so I'm going to start by just drawing a curve down here. I'm going to pull a long way. Remember, it only takes 3 points to make a corner. You don't need 7 points to make a corner. Have you guys heard that spiel from me yet? If you haven't, you're about to. So one of the things I see when people are getting started, right, is they will way over machine gun their curves. We don't want to make a corner like this. That's not what we want to do. We only want to make corners with 3 points, right? That's all you need. And if I turn the points on, if I need a sharper corner, I just move those 3 points closer together. If I need a looser corner or a softer corner, I move those points apart. And if you think about this curve is a lot cleaner than this curve, right? Every time I place a point, that's an opportunity for an inflection. And so my goal is to do curves with as few points as possible. And I want to pull those points farther than I think they necessarily need to go. And so I'm going to start by kind of pulling this into shape based on the sketch. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to use match. And I'm going to match this to this edge. If I go curvature, I don't like that. So let's go with tangency. curvature is I don't have enough points in order to get accurate curvature. I'd have to make more points in here because curvature is based on the 0 point, the 1 point, and the 2 point. So this point, with tangency, it's just the 0 and the 1 point, so G0, G1, G0, G1, G2 for curvature. So I'm going to just leave it at tangency for now because I think that's going to do what we need it to do. So I know that this curve is now matched with this edge, tangent, right? These all line up. All right, so then I'm going to just pull this to about the midpoint here. And I'm going to just do the same thing. I'm just going to pull this kind of to the midpoint. And then this, I'm going to pull this back here. And if I go to the top view, then I want to kind of start evaluating my shape now and say, okay, what does this thing do as it comes back in space? Is it really flat? Is it really curved? Like what's really happening in here? And I think I want a gentle arc, but not like anything super crazy. So I'm going to just adjust this kind of like that. And then let's do our walk around here and take a look and see how we feel about this thing. I kind of like this swoop that it's got. So then we need to do the same thing in the back, right? So I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm going to set my gumball down here, and the back's flat, right? So I'm going to just stick it to this corner and then scale it to 0. And then I know that this is flat and that's flat, and then we can just run a 2-rail sweep off of that thing, which we are perfectly set up to do because we can do this and use that edge, and boom, there's our canopy, right? Feeling good about that? I kind of like that. So, and so then we're going to have a little bit of work to do to try and figure out like what this transition is up here, but for the most part, I think we're in good shape. And so what I can also do is I can steal the inside of this, right? This curve in here, I can steal this surface, copy paste, and I can scale it down a bit, and I can just place it in using Gumball in here to try and get the right relationship between the two, right? And so now I want to switch my view, my vision. I want to look at the gaps as opposed to the surfaces, and I want to look at this white space right here. How do I feel about that white space? Does it need to be tighter here so that it gets a little bit more swoop? Does it need to be wider? I really like this kind of thick thin that's going on with this thing. I really like this thing kind of ending up kind of wispy down here. So I'm going to rotate it up, and you can see that's where we started. That's the original curve, which I'm going to get rid of. And just look at the white space here. And I may even rotate it a bit further down here just to get that. I may even scale it in one direction just to adjust that a little bit. And I'm hanging laundry on the line, so to speak, you know? I'm just kind of sticking stuff in space and seeing how it feels, and seeing how I feel about that, and evaluating it and trying to see from a designer's point of view, right? We're not modelers, we're designers, but we are modelers, but we want to work as designers, and we want this stuff to look good. That's the whole point, right? Now, this thing obviously has a deep inset in it, so I'm going to set my gumball back here, and then I'm going to scale this in to kind of determine where the start and end point of that inset is. And I can mess with that later because blend surface now has history. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to stick this at the back. I'm going to make sure that this goes all the way to the back. Now, if your gumball does not respond to O-snaps, right-click on the settings down here and make sure that you're set to snappy dragging. That's the trick to get Gumball to respond to O-snaps. The other thing you'll notice about my O-snaps is I run them disabled. And that seems counterintuitive, but if you hold down the Alt key, it allows them to be enabled or disabled depending on what you need, right? So if I tap Alt, it makes a copy of the thing, right? But if I hold Alt, it makes the O-snaps turn on, and I can use Gumball to find them, which is super, super useful. So I run it disabled because I can't stand when O-snap is going here, 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 as I'm going around this screen, you know. So let's start adding a little bit of form to this, and I'm going to just use Blend Surface, which lives up here. I keep using my pop-up palette, which you guys don't have, so I want to make sure and I'm using tools that you have access to. And that really, at curvature, is probably overkill, but let's see. That actually made a really beautiful surface. I really kind of like that. So I think I'm going to roll with it. I may actually even run curvature on this thing and say okay. And if we throw material on this, let's go into rendered mode and spin it. I'm really happy with those highlights. Isn't that gorgeous? Cool kind of thing like that. So now you'll notice that we've overshot the mark here a little bit, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. We'll deal with that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join all this stuff. I'm going to turn this into a chunk, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot if you watch any of my videos. I like to build in like solid chunks, and so what I'll do is I'll actually loft the back of this thing, join it, and then see if we can cap anything. It looks like we don't have anything planar, so we'll just use. And this can be messy right now. I'm not super concerned about this. I just want it closed, because most likely both of those surfaces are going to get cut off. But we'll notice that this is now a closed object, right? If I check my objects, there's no naked edges, no non-manifold edges. And that allows me to do some things with this, like Booleans and things like that. But it also allows me to treat this as kind of an independent entity. And so I can say this entity is kind of done for now. I'm gonna worry about that later. And now I can start looking at this guy down here. And basically all we're gonna do is just knock edges off this thing, right? And so when we're knocking edges, I'm going to hide everything by using the isolate command. And basically when we're knocking edges off, we want to start with the biggest edges, which are going to be this one and this one and this one. And then we're going to go to the smaller edges, which are going to be these down here, these, right? So we're going to go from big to little. We never want to go from little to big when we're doing this stuff. We always want to go from big to little. So let's go ahead and start, and I'm going to just go ahead and use the right click. Instead of fillet edges, I'm going to use blend edges because I like them better. I think they look nicer. And so let's go ahead and pick the big edges first. And we can preview these, and we can see right off the bat those are not big enough. So I'm going to drag this one up. And if we go to the front view, we can kind of see approximately what we're dealing with. And that feels about right, maybe even a little bigger, like that. So 4.925. Don't do that to your machinist. We'll talk about that a little bit, but if you see a crazy number like that, get it close, and then we'll figure out like what the actual closest like nominal number that we can use, and then we'll use that, because otherwise your machinist is going to hate you when they go to machine this thing. So we'll go something like that, and we'll say, that feels about right. So then we want to say, okay, 6.187, 6.08. Let's go 6.25. And let's make this one. And then let's make, we've got 4.236 and 4.245. Let's just go 4.25. That way, if you are machining this thing, your tool maker is going to be able to pick a tool that's usable instead of having to get a custom tool made. So this one's 4.925, this one's 4.89. Let's just go 4.9. And it looks like everything ran except for this guy has a little bit of an issue down there, so that's fine. I'm going to let it run and we'll just deal with it. So let's see what we've got. And it looks like this didn't quite make the journey. So let's just pull it out. Let's see if match surf will get us there. And it looks like it won't because it's a trimmed object. So let's just pull it out. And we've got a four-sided surface, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Boop. Now there's a lot of isoprams in there. So we can decide whether that's okay. And in this case, I probably will say that that's okay. But if we decided not to do that, what we could do is we could grab these two edges and rebuild them. See how there's 20 edges in here? Let's start with 4 and see how close we can get. And it's not super close, right? We're 0.07 away. So let's try this. Let's go 5 and 4. And you see we're much, much closer. So that still gives us a single span curve. So let's go ahead and run that. And now let's do 1, 2 off the curve, 3, 4 off the curve. See how we get a much nicer surface there? And if we join it in, it should join. And it does, closed surface. And that gives us a much nicer result, right? All right, so now we have to start talking about like, how do we do, this is a complicated section right here, right? Where we come down this edge here. This is a little Y branch. And we may have to do some fussing with it, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this edge first. I'm going to do this blend first. And then if I have to come back and section this in or do something crazy, then we can do that. It's not a big deal. So this I'm going to leave sharp because we're going to build that form off of it. But let's go ahead and add the rest of our shapes here. So let's do, I think these, that one's probably going to be big. That one's probably going to be big. Yeah, the back I'm going to leave dead flat. I'm not even going to worry about that because that's the way these things were usually built, is they were an open shell with like a cardboard backer on them. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just respect the process there. So let's do a blend again. I'm going to grab this guy, and I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do this one. And this may be complicated. It might not work. The automated tool might choke on us, and that's okay. If it does, then we'll deal with it. And let's preview it. And it looks like it's going to get us most of the way there. Let's see if we can go bigger. Let's see what happens if we get a 2-inch. All right, so now the wheels are starting to fall off. You can see that we're getting a bunch of isoprams in here, which is okay. But see how this is starting to get messed up? I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this tool as a starting point. So let's go back a little bit. All right, and I'm going to let that run, and you're going to go, what in the world are you doing? You just made a mess out of this, right? And to some extent I did, and that's okay, because we're going to go back and fix it. So what I've done is I've basically just used the fillet tool as a trimming mechanism, and then I'm going to go back and clean this up. So I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to keep that one, and I'm going to take this one out, and I'm going to keep this one. And then what I'll do is, and then this is just entirely a mess, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. And then we're going to start pulling the model apart a little bit. And you're like, wait, you were done. Why are you pulling this apart? It's fine. Don't worry about it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a curve from here to here. And I'm going to steal this curve. I'm going to rebuild it. And then I'm going to match it to this curve position. And you can see that it gives me this shape, but since I rebuilt it, it's still pretty simple. It's pretty light. So I'm going to relocate my gumball here and watch this. I'm going to scale it. See how nice and controllable that is? Like that. And then I'm going to trim. Now I've got one edge up here that's no good. See that little blip right there? I'm going to pull this guy out and I'm going to untrim it. And then I'm going to go to the front view and let's just draw a straight line from here to here. Trim that. And that gives us a much cleaner edge that we can use to build off of. Right? Let's hide our curves. Now we've got 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that's kind of an ugly surface. So, and the reason for that is it's taking its information from this down here. So we can do a couple of things. I can rebuild it, right? I can just do 4 and 4, 3 and 3. And that gives us a little better version of it that we can then match surf. And see, it's kind of pulling itself apart a little bit, so we're going to preserve the iso curves. And then we'll match position here. And then I actually want this curve, so I want this shape. So I'm actually going to pull that down and overbuild it a little bit. Pull this bottom out, trim, and trim. Oops, history bit me in the butt, so I'm going to get rid of history. There we go. Join it back up. And that corner is all nice and clean now. Should be. But it's not, so let's fix it. And that is now a trimmed surface. So I tell you what, because I like this surface, I'm happy with that. So let's join that back in. Let's fix the easy one, which is this one. There we go. And then this one's also easy. So let's do this. Go for the easy thing. Use the easy thing. Don't go for the hard thing. Where does edge analysis live? It lives down here under the analysis tools, under the normals, right down here. The commands show edges. All right. So now we've got some stuff to do, some work to do here. I'm going to just do that with a blend curve using this guy. I'm going to blend from here to here, and then I'm going to blend from here to here. And in the top view, I'm going to trim this guy. And then in the front view, see how I'm missing just a little bit? So let's, instead of blending from there to there, let's blend from here to here. Get rid of that guy. So now we can, and there's a continuity break here, so there is going to be a little issue here. So what I might actually want to do is, instead of building off of this edge, I actually may want to do this. And I may want to adjust this so that it looks really close, but is not exactly dead on. And then build like this. We'll see. This might be, I might be going down a blind alley here, but it happens. Now that's got an awful lot of isoparams in it, and the reason for that is it's taking its information from this trimmed edge. So let's do better. still taking information from these trimmed edges because this thing is trimmed at the edge. So this thing is got, if I look at the points on this, if I look at the points on these, you can see how many points. This one's nice and light, but see how that has a ton of points? So let's rebuild. Let's make a duplicate of this and rebuild it. And you can see that, you know, even if we just do, if we do degree 3, sorry, degree 3, we're at 0.02. If I do degree 5, I'm really close. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and do that. Whoop. Looks like history took off on me. See that? Sometimes history does that. It's one of the more irritating things about history. The other thing that we might even be able to do is we might even be able to do this in one piece, but I think that'll make a complicated surface, so let's not. We have to go back and remake that blend curve though. And it's close, but it's not perfect. That's fine. We'll go back and retrim it later. But we just want a little bit better version of that. That's a lot better. Now let's see if it'll join. It might not. And in this case, it didn't. So let's match surf. We'll do a tangency. Say okay. And then we'll do the same thing down here. And we'll do the same thing up here. We could have done that all in one shot, but it looks like it's not going to join. So it looks like we've got a little bit of an issue with maybe this guy, so let's get rid of it. And let's go from here to here. That should join. Nope. So it's not joining because there's not enough points in this surface to accurately match this surface. So let's let it refine. See this? Boop. Had to add a few more points down here. Same thing here. So it added some complexity, but it's not terrible, but it does join. And then now we've got that, which does join. Now we don't have, this edge here we're not going to worry about, right? I'm not going to worry about that just yet, because I'm gonna do this entire edge at one time, and then we'll figure out how all that works together later. That may be a complicated little spot, but I'm ignoring it for now. And in this case, I'm going to just simply do a blend curve from here, and I'm going to do it to a point, because this is going to be just position there, right? I don't need anything other than positional continuity. So I'm going to trim this. I'm going to kill history so that it doesn't bite me. History purge is the command there. I'm going to pull this out, trim, join it back up. And then I can just do either a 2-rail sweep. I'll probably do that. You can see as the day goes on, I get a little lazier. Let's see if we can get away with 6 points on this thing. Let's see how we did. And it joined in everywhere, so I'm going to not rebuild it. I'm going to just let it go. And it didn't join here, so I'm going to just simply delete this surface. Right? We're going to go after the easy stuff. See this little edge down here? Let's use the, let's fix it. Down here underneath the edge tools, there's a split edge merge edge. If you haven't used this before, it's pretty cool because you can take an edge that's split up like that and turn it back into a regular edge, which then gives you this. And that is really ugly. I don't like that at all. So let's rebuild it. And it looks like this is a polysurface for some reason. I'm a little confused as to why. Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. So let's fix it. Duplicate the edge, rebuild it. We're really close with intolerance, so let's try again. Still doing that odd little thing there. I can't quite figure out where that's coming from. It's coming from one of these edges. That's odd. All right, fine. What happens if we do this? Nope, not that. Don't do that. That's better. So something about this edge up here has gone haywire. Let's look at the points and see if we can figure out what's going on. I don't see anything there that would lend me to think that that is the problem. That's very strange. Let's look at all the points. That's usually where all the lying happens. So this curve is really complicated, so let's rebuild it. And we're well within tolerance there. And then let's do another. Man, that is weird. Where is that coming from? Ah, there it is. See that right there? I knew we'd find it. There we go. That's much better. There we go. Always look at your curves. That's where all the lying happens. All right, so we're pretty close to the point where we can start refining this thing. And I need to deal with this center section here. And I'm probably going to, instead of doing this with a fillet, because I don't think it'll work, I'm going to do this with, I'm going to save this first. 53 minutes into a live demo and the first time he saves. That's the definition of bravery, folks. Or stupidity, I guess, is a more apt description of that. Fortunately, Rhino's pretty stable, so I usually don't get burned with that. So I'm going to just draw a line in here, copy, and I'm going to use these guys to trim. And I could do this numerically, you know, all that kind of stuff, but who has time for that? And I'm going to just trim a hole right through here. All right, and then I'm not going to worry about this just yet. I'm going to ignore that for longer still. If I can't figure it out, I'll just be like, and that's enough time for today. Thanks for joining. Guys will be like, boo. All right, now let's see if we can do this all in one big long blend. So let's blend but chain, and let's do it tangency, and let's add some shapes. I want to go from here to here. I want to go from here to here, and let's adjust the endpoints here using the Alt key. I want these to flow. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these guys. I'm going to take this and screw it up. There we go. I want to pull these closer together because I want that to be sharp, right? Or sharper. That's how I want that to happen. So let's add our shapes back. Since I screwed it up the first time, I always like to say I make the mistakes so you don't have to. But when you're building something you've never built before, you're going to do things not perfect. All right, now these are crossing, which I do not like. So I'm going to pull these apart. I don't want to cross them, right? So let's make sure that we're not crossing anywhere else. I'm going to pull these a little closer, pull that a little closer, say okay. All right, now let's see what we've got. Let's join it up and just see what kind of mess we're dealing with. And let's go and take a peek. And I'm going to hide this. There we go. So we still have our delineation there, which I like, but we've got some work to do as far as cleaning up this mess. So let's go and show our edges again so we can see what we're dealing with. And we've got a fairly clean edge here, right? That's not awful. So let's just see what happens if we were to blend from here. And I don't want to auto chain this. I want to just do this to here. And it's predictably a little ugly, but let's see if we can salvage it. And it doesn't look like it really loves us. So I think that that's probably not going to be an awesome option. So how do we deal with this? Well, a couple of ways. One, we want to blend from here to here, right? So I think our first goal is to get this over to here somehow. And I think the way to do that is going to be to use a blend curve from here to this edge. And we want to kind of put this in a place where it kind of flows fairly naturally, right? Like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. And we may have to go back and forth and tink on this a little bit in order to get it to do exactly what we want, but let's go something like that. And then I'm going to kill history because I don't want those curves to jump around. And then I'm actually going to split this edge here. And then I've got a little four-sided surface I can throw in here, right? And I can say, that's not terrible. Now, this, if I say this is my primary surface, then that means I may have to redo both of these. But that's okay because I've established like this is kind of the blend I want. So if I join this and I hide this and go to rendered view, look at it, I kind of like how that's happening. So then what I'll do is say, okay, let's go back and see what happens if I do this. It's not bad, right? Pretty happy with that. Let's see if our luck holds out, and if we can just keep going, maybe we can roll this guy all the way down. Let's see. Maybe not. You know, we might have to do a little transitionary surface in here, but let's give it a shot. Let's see if we can live easy, and if not, then we'll figure out a different way to do it. And I already can tell that I hate this. See how that's bumpy in there? I don't like that at all. We might be able to put a slash in here and get it to change, but I don't like that very much at all. So, new plan. Let's see if we can build from here to here, right? We might be able to just pull that off. And if that looks okay, then great. If not, and I'm thinking that we may have a little issue in there, I may need to actually get this thing to turn the corner a little harder. And the way to do that is I'm actually going to extract this guy. Let's match him first. I want to make sure that this is really nice and clean. And then let's trim this guy. Let's trim a little wedge out of him. See how that helps it kind of get around the corner like that? We're not fighting that weird angle. So let's join everything up. Ooh, don't like that. So I'm going to try and clean that up a little bit. Say okay. Let's put it first and last. Let's join that up, see how it goes. I don't hate that. A little womble in there, maybe just a little bit. We could obsess over that, and I probably would if this was a client job, but I think I'm going to move on. So, and then what we could even do is we could even put a second trim down here and actually, try and blend over that in this direction. I don't know. We could play with it a couple different ways. Maybe we need a second trim up here and then we blend from that end to that end. Maybe we need to redo this entire thing. Maybe we take one more shot at this just since we're here. Is this useful so far? Am I boring anybody to death? I actually like that better. Look at that. That's a little cleaner. I think I'm happier with that. Yeah, I think that looks better. All right. So let's deal with this guy up here. Now, we can decide exactly what, so now I have to figure out like what's going on in this corner down here. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the right side. Let's hide our curves. Oh, left side. And I'm gonna scale it actually in one direction. And I'm gonna eyeball it close like that. And then I can do a couple of things down here. I can try, let's experiment, shall we? Let's see if it'll Boolean. And it does. And you can say, well, that's great, but kind of a mess down here. And that's okay, because we can kind of work around that, right? I can kind of build around that, because I can kind of see my way from like here to kind of something up in here, right? And then kind of from here into there, maybe. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe we've made a mess of it. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll figure it out. I may want to pull that in just a hair more. If I'm drawing a curve here. Actually, I'm pretty close. So now all we have to do is kind of figure out how to model around this corner. And I'm going to start doing that by peeling back the onion a little bit. I'm going to pull those corners out. And if I blend from here to here, trim that. Oops. All right. Starting to see a pathway here. And then if we go, maybe this guy goes away. Maybe this goes away. This is super ugly. We don't want anything to do with that. So let's get that straightened out. So let's blend from here to here. Looks like that really got a little nasty. Looks like we're not quite, see that little chip in the end of that? So let's get rid of this guy. And let's get rid of this. And let's untrim that. So now we've got a clean edge down here, right? So now what I can do is I can do this. B is position, A is tangent. That's cleaned up. And now we can try and do something like this. Let's try blending between here and there. 2 is going to be position. I don't hate that. It's not entirely correct yet, but that's, as a starting point, that's not terrible. It's got way too many points, so let's rebuild it. Not quite enough points. Let's see if we can match it. That's not bad. Little weirdness in this surface right here. See how that's kind of rolling over like that? But what we can do is we can use this as a guide, right? And if we go from here to here, that looks like that actually is pretty close to what we want. So let's steal this edge. And then let's go back into this guy. Get rid of that. Now we can say 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives us that piece of it. And now we're going to sneak up on it, right? Like that. And then we just need to kind of maybe split back something like this. Right? Let's join this all up. And then let's do the 2-rail sweep with a chain. And let's see if we can do tangency in here. It may make a mess. And that's okay, because we're going to just get closer, right? Say okay, join it up. And we've still got a little mess up here. So watch this. I'm going to pull it back out. I'm going to split by an isocurve. Join that back up. See how we're kind of sneaking up on it? And then maybe I'll even do something crazy like throw a network surface in here. I'm going to leave it. Let's not do that. Let's do this. Like that. And then we can decide like what's happening to this transition right here. Do we want to smooth this out? Do we want that all to smooth out like that? Or are we going to leave it sharp? I might leave it sharp. Let's see what it looks like. Not in love with that. Let's see if we can do better. So let's pull that out for now. Let's try and blend from here to here. get rid of those interior shapes. Let's straighten this out a little bit. Actually, let's do that with let's do that with this whole section. Let's blend from here. Oop, to here. And let's do it tangent, tangent. Join it up, see how it looks. If we can get this corner to feel right, then it's a simple strip to get it to roll back up into there. Yeah, I like that better. So now we'll pull this guy back out. And I'm going to split by isocurve here, here, and then I'm going to split by isocurve again and go up, I don't know, pretty far, like that. Arbitrary, we'll see. We'll see whether it pays off or not. And then we'll just simply do a four-sided. Could probably use a little match in here, but not the end of the world. We might even be able to get away with this. Let it figure it out for us. I don't hate that idea. I'm going to add a shape in here. And we can play with that a little bit. Ooh, I like that a lot better. There we go. That makes me happier. I like that better. All right, so let's go ahead and finish up some details. Where are we? 1013. That's not too bad. So the perforated panel in here, I'm going to just simply copy these curves. And make a planar surface. I'm going to tuck this in like this. And we have to decide, like, does this thing have any shape to it? If it does have shape, or if it's just flat. I think it kind of might actually have a little bit of shape to it. Like that. I'm going to just go to the front view and scale it a little bit. Make sure we're not poking out anywhere. And I don't know, how do you guys feel about that? Is it dead flat, or maybe it almost feels like it wants to have like a little cup to it? So I'm going to change the degree. Turn its points on. And maybe we pull these points. Don't ever just accept what Rhino gives you. Feel free to grab points and start pulling stuff. That's where the good stuff happens. That's kind of cool. Maybe I'll even untrim this so I can play with the shape a little bit more. I'm guessing you didn't get into commercial art because you like having people tell you what to do, so don't let Rhino tell you what to do. Figure it out for yourself and make Rhino do it for you. That's the whole key with all of this is, right? You got to figure out how to use the tools well enough that you can make it do what you want and not the other way around. That's kind of the whole goal here is I want you to see, you know, am I the world's greatest modeler? No. I mean, I have friends like Sky Greenwalt would look at this and he'd be heaving into a waste bin right now watching me build this because that's not how he builds. He builds mostly class A and super clean and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But and I think that's an entirely valid way to work. But this is an entirely valid way to work as well. All right, so there's our front and our back. We'll figure out whether we want to actually make this perf metal or whether we want to assign a material to it. If we were going to manufacture it, I would say that we would actually go ahead and blow the blow the holes through it. If we weren't going to manufacture it and we were just going to do a render, I'd probably just assign a material to it. So we'll decide whether we're going to do that a little bit later. All right. Let's go ahead and finish up the detailing. So far, I'm pretty happy with the original, with the shape. But let's go ahead and wrap up the details here. So I'm going to just start, and I'm going to do. I'm going to use Gumball to do this actually. So we're going to start with a planar surface. I'm going to stick this in here like that. Make sure it's all the way in there. And then I'm going to extrude out. And then I'm going to cap this again. And then watch this. I'm going to sub-object select, shift control click, drag, tap alt, make a copy. I'm going to scale this in a little bit. And then I'm actually going to delete that one and loft. And that gives me my little radius there. Kill history. Shift drag to scale in. Planar surface again. Grab that guy. Extrude it back using Gumball. See how much modeling is happening with Gumball here? And then shift object select, control shift click to sub object select and delete. And then there's my slot. It was like all like 2 tools to do all that, right? Let's put our little indicator dot in here. Do that with simple Boolean. Probably use the same dot to go up here. There we go. And then we'll just make our other dial down here. And I might even steal this. Why build something twice if you don't have to? That. This one's much deeper. And see how deep this got? I'm going to shift control click. And I'm actually going to just pull this back because that got too deep. We can make that less deep and still a little too deep. There we go. Booleans to finish. Shrink it just a little bit so we can see the reveal. Same thing here. And I think we're about done. Yeah, most everybody stayed. Hide the image. Go into rendered mode. All right, so let's throw a few materials on this. Let's go and throw a material on here. We'll make a new one. And I'm going to change it to custom. And in the color slot, I've got some dots down here. And drag this onto that. Too many dots, so let's fix it. And let's change the mapping on it just a little bit so that I don't like how it's stretching like that. So let's go to the front view and let's fix the mapping on it. Let's do it just a surface or a planar map, sorry. There we go. Then we can play with the mapping widget to adjust the scale of these things. There we go. That's better. Hide that. Do some metal for the knobs. Save it. And let's throw it in ray trace mode and see what it looks like. Hour 23, start to finish. How'd we do? What if this was an LED? Or some kind of little indicator. In V7, we've got emissive materials, by the way. So it's those are really useful. So we can make that look like a little light. But in V7, these are actually emissive and they actually are a light source. So they look really nice. Let that res up. And there you have it. Any questions? Anything that you saw that you were like, whoa, that was nuts, or I didn't like that, or explain that again? This is the time for questions. Alrighty, if there's no questions, I'll let you guys go. I'm Kyle Houchins. This was Getting Started Rhino for Windows. Go make great stuff. Thanks, everybody. Bye.